Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I can get away with saying that. Welcome to Archant Towers this Friday evening. I am Michael Bailey. I am joined by City correspondent David Freezer. Hello, David.
How do you?
We were going to do a whole newsreader-esque introduction, weren't we? But we're not.
We'll do that at the end and pretend we're talking.
Yeah. If we get that far, of course. Welcome. We, of course, have been at Colney this lunchtime to talk to Daniel Farke and Mario Vrancic ahead of Norwich City's visit from Reading. We have got loads of stuff to discuss from Colney. You can also hear from both Vrancic and Farke over at PinkUn.com right now and read some of what they've had to say. Or you can hang around and wait until we've talked about it at the same time. Get your questions, comments and anything else you want to say into us on the live Facebook feed, and we will do our best to address everything that you wish to say. But first of all, I think the best place to start off, as always, is with the team news. Dave, how are Norwich City looking ahead of the Reading game?
It was a bit more positive, wasn't it? Nelson Oliveira was the surprise one, could be on the bench tomorrow, which is ahead of schedule. On Monday, Daniel had said that it was looking like 2 weeks out with his calf injury after the Hull game, but a chance that he could be involved against Reading tomorrow, so that's good news.
Great news.
Alex Tetty, not as bad as first feared, as we well know from the pictures you may have seen on our websites. Alex Tetty lost quite a bit of blood from that gash.
Hole in his foot,
inflicted by teammate James' husband.
Yes, indeed,
by accident. But
who sort of felt bad about it.
I suppose you're going to, aren't you? He is going to be back in training, certainly, but after the international break. He may even be back by that Fulham game, although obviously they're not committing to that fully at the moment. And the illnesses, Christoph Zimmermann and Harrison Reed, both okay, both back in training, although Daniel did point out that they're going to need to be careful with Christoph, aren't they? Yeah. Because he's lost so much weight. He
described it as he was nearly dead on Tuesday, which, I mean, he wasn't looking great, to be honest.
It's unlike Daniel to be dramatic, isn't it? I suggested that he maybe needs to eat a few hamburgers or something.
Yeah.
But Daniel made the genuine point that these guys are professional sportsmen. They're very fit. I'm sure there's a fairly low body fat percentage on Christoph Zimmermann. He looks like a chap who spends plenty of time in the gym, just like us, Michael. And he's going to need to get that weight back on, because I think you could see start second half on Tuesday at Barnsley. He looked tired, didn't he? He looked weary. And
it's an interesting debate, because that factors into whether he would have come off and the tactical change that we got at Barnsley. It would have been interesting had Christoph been okay. Would Daniel Farke have made the same change as early? Because he doesn't tend to make changes as early as the 60th minute. But let's not go over old ground. What I would say, though, does Daniel Farke start with 4 at the back, or go back to his back 3 for Reading?
It's a difficult one to predict. I mean, Reading are quite a similar team to Norwich, aren't they, in that they're very possession based. I think recently they seem to have been playing more of a 4-3-3, and Bodvarsson seems to have been having a bit of an impact up front for them. Mo Barrow, who was at Swansea, played a bit in the Premier League, didn't he? He's got great pace, and same with Shoni Aluko on the other side, so they've got that threat, but they're looking at their injury list, it's actually worse than Norwich's. I'd have said there is the possible threat of Chris Martin as well, who I had completely forgotten had joined Reading in January. He missed their 3-0 defeat at Wolves in midweek with illness, but he should be okay, so he's going to be on the bench as well. And we know full well from last season that Chris Martin enjoys scoring against Norwich.
Yes, and getting sent off as well. That's happened too, so that's all good. The one other thing, I guess, is a point in terms of team news, because I think we covered the rest of it, didn't we?
Yeah, I think otherwise it didn't sort of move things on too much, did it? Moritz Leitner, Marcus Stiepermann, hopefully back after the international break. Tom Tribble, we're looking a little bit longer than that, aren't we? I guess he'll probably be back in training after the international break. And Matt Jarvis, he's sort of hampered a bit, but now by the fact that the under-23s haven't got a game for a month. So I did ask Daniel whether they'd look at organising a friendly, but that didn't sound likely, just because I don't think they want any extra games. And Louis Thompson, very small chance that he could play some 23s before the end of the season, but it doesn't sound likely.
I think they just want to take it carefully with Louis. It's about him getting back to playing football, never mind about what level and all that sort of stuff.
But he must be desperate to play football. It's getting on for 2 years, isn't it, or 18 months certainly, so poor bloke.
Indeed, and I guess the one other one was Marcus Edwards, which I think is worth picking up.
Who?
Yeah,
Have we spoken about him
the
recently?
English Messi, don't forget. Yeah, he got his traditional question. I think he's been getting one at each press conference. But I did ask Daniel as if to scratch a little bit below the surface of where the frustration of this English talent who's so good with the ball yet seems to have come completely without any kind of maturity without it. I get the impression there are a few other things. I don't think it's all to do with performances on the training pitch necessarily, so there's obviously issues there. Quite a long-winded question, as you know. I tend to ask long-winded questions, and all I got back was wait until Saturday to judge.
There we go.
And then he sort of glinted. Now, to me, I think that underlines the fact that Marcus Edwards will be in the squad on Saturday, providing he turns up and is there ready to in his kit to actually appear. So that would be exciting. That would be a big talking point, really.
Well, it's about time. Whether we'd see him on the pitch or not, it would be progress. It would be at least acknowledge that he exists, because he's not even played under 23s game, has he?
And he has got the under 20s call up that's coming up over the international break.
He
so
has. That
he's warming up.
Gave us the fresh momentum because clearly we've asked Daniel about this a lot, haven't we? And there's only so much. I mean, I think he's sort of repeated himself a few times already. So the fact that Marcus has been called up for the England under 20s sort of gave us a fresh angle on it almost. And I put it to Daniel that is that a good thing? Get some game time, hopefully build some confidence. And Daniel was certainly on board with that. Just doing a bit of homework since we got back, I hadn't realised how many caps Marcus Edwards has got. He's got 45 at youth level for England. He played 27 times at under 17 level, I think it was. He scored about 10 goals. So this is a guy that has really come through the system for England. So that's why they're persisting with him at under 20s level, despite the fact he's not even involved for Norwich. So yeah, if he's on the bench, that's another option to have. Whether you'd have thought it's unlikely he's going to be coming on ahead of Wes Hoolahan, but Daniel has mentioned that he can play on the right as well, hasn't he? So.
He might start. You never know. Wow. I mean, at this point in the season, let's be frank, Norwich haven't got much to play for. They're playing against a team that are in a bad run of form. Reading have won once in 17 league games, isn't it? The guy is going to be surely desperate to impress, and probably in decent spirits because he's got another call up, and it's almost like throwing in a firecracker and seeing what happens.
What have you got to lose, almost, in that sort of situation?
Stranger things have happened.
As me and Paddy talked maybe a couple of weeks ago, I think we're saying that as much as we all love Wes Hoolahan, and you want to, all the Norwich fans love Wes Hoolahan, and they want to see more of Wes. If there's a chance that Marcus Edwards could be the successor to James Maddison next season, and that he could be coming back here on loan for a full season once Norwich are happy that he's bringing enough to the table, then it makes much more sense to be playing him than Wes Hoolahan at the moment, if you look at it in sort of a cold, hard, factual, forward-thinking way. But of course that's not football, is it? Yeah, there's always that little bit of sentiment and emotion to football.
Indeed. And there was a lovely role from Wes Hoolahan, I thought, on Tuesday, backed up by what he did the week before, so there's a little bit of influence there. It'd be lovely to see Wes at some point on Saturday. Barry Back says Farke's smirk at the Edwards remark, though, crying emoji, which I guess was relatively telling indeed. The other point I guess we should touch on was I asked Daniel Farke about how Reading are so different and what he made of their difference in terms of being so close to promotion last season, one kick away, and what's happened this year, which has been a kind of a dismantling of all that work in many ways. Jaap Stam is still there, but you look through the 11 that's expected to play tomorrow, it's quite a lot different to the one that turned up last year, I'd say, in many places. And his answer kind of talked about how small margins are, and little things can make such a ridiculously big impact, which got him talking about Hull and the refereeing performance, which is obviously something he really wanted to get off his chest. Dave, and a bit of a revelation in there as well.
Well, it's like a therapeutic session for him almost, wasn't it? Once he got the ball rolling, it all just came flooding out of him, and it was quite a rant in the end. It sort of started off quite slow, and then by the end I was thinking, wow, this is quite a speech he's put together here.
Cathartic,
It was. Yeah. He really got some stuff off his chest, and he ranted about the penalties at Hull, and how if they had, if Jamal Lewis hadn't have given away that penalty, if the referee hadn't given the ridiculous decision, then they're 3-1 up. They should win that game. Then they're 8 unbeaten, and they've lost 1 in 15, and everyone travels to Hull full of hope. And it's interesting, this interview came up in midweek in the German press, didn't it? And there was that word which I'm not going to try and pronounce, very long German word which basically means mood swings. And I think it was almost an elongation of that thought process that everyone's been very up and very down, and there's almost there's not too much willing to just sort of let things progress and just give the team the support, regardless of what happens. But that's not just Norwich, is it? That's football. That's football fans throughout. So
maybe it's English football fans more than
maybe. But I'd find that difficult to believe. And football is an emotional game. That's what makes it the best game in the world when it's good. Not all the time. Not when it's a 0-0 at home against Bolton.
No, this is it. I was just trying to find the word because I think Corey had it, didn't he, as his hashtag?
Yeah, I heard him.
Stimmung Schwankungen, or better pronounce that right. Stimmung Schwankungen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not how it's
that
pronounced.
Was pretty much it, wasn't it?
He
I pride myself on my pronunciations, so there we go.
He was on the scrimmage last night, wasn't he? And he pronounced it very well. So
I'm sure he did.
Let him do that.
We'll let him do that. Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. It's interesting that he did feel that Jamal Lewis, there was a handball in the build-up to the second penalty, but let's maybe not rank over old ground against Hull. David Brett, would you say that lack of goals is the failing of the strikers or the midfield just not feeding the strikers? Or I suppose, to extend the point, is it a problem with the setup? Because some people don't feel that Daniel Farke's maybe getting some of the criticism he possibly deserves, in their opinion, at the moment.
Yeah, I think the shape and the formation has been something that people have spoken about throughout the season, haven't they? Because it's clear, whether it was Jerome or Oliveira at the start of the season, now Marley Watkins, particularly first half at Barnsley, they look isolated, don't they? It's not looking remotely like sort of traditional football where you're getting wingers to the byline, crosses coming in, and that little bit of sort of pinball and chaos in the box where a striker looks to thrive. There's so little of that with Norwich. It's more they're striving for a sort of a higher level of game, aren't they? That you watch somebody like an Arsenal or a Manchester City where they probe around the edge of the box and they try and pull the opposition out of their position to try and create those openings. But at times, as we said right from the start of the season, right from that 4-0 defeat at Millwall, you have to be able to mix it up in the Championship, don't you? You have to be able to go direct sometimes. So it would be a wonderful opportunity to speak to Nelson Oliveira, wouldn't it? Say he were to leave Norwich this summer and he goes wherever, one of the promoted teams, Wolves or something like that, and you got to have a chat with him about what he thought of the formation and the system this season. I think it would make for scintillating listening.
Oh, maybe indeed. Connor Southall. Hello, Connor. Sorry if this has been asked. I don't think it has. What do you guys think is the offensive solution going forwards? Is it a case of upping the tempo? Do they require personnel changes? I mean, I've looked at the 11 that is probably going to start tomorrow, and there aren't that many options. You run out of players who are available pretty quickly, and Nelson is obviously only fit enough to start on the bench, so that does make it quite awkward, doesn't it, really? Because Marley Watkins as a frontline striking option hasn't worked at home or away from home, and last time out Dennis Shrabini struggled really to have any kind of impact on the game.
Yeah, it's a difficult one for Daniel, that, because I think Marley would benefit from having another game up front and actually trying to find some rhythm, because that's kind of been his problem all season, isn't it? That he's not really had a run of it where things have gone for him. But equally, if you're going to start with the wide players like you finished on Tuesday and have Murphy and Hernandez on the pitch, perhaps you're better to have Shrabini up front, because he's got the height, and if you're going to get crosses into the box and try and play a bit more direct against a team like Reading, who are even more possession based than Norwich, they're even above Norwich in the possession rankings in the division, and I think it's only Fulham who average a higher possession. So that's an interesting one for him. Do you stick with James Husband ahead of Jamal Lewis at left back? I would have thought Husband would probably just get the nod as long as he's fit enough, and presumably Harrison Reed, now that he's over his illness, will start with Mario Vrancic in midfield, because there's not really any other option, is there?
That's pretty much the conclusion I came to. I do think that it wouldn't be a disaster if James Husband carried on the left side and Jamal Lewis was given that sort of break ahead of his first international duty, because I think the break will probably do him good for the time being. Jez Arlo, I can't understand why Farke plays Murphy and Watkins as centre forwards, as they aren't built for that role, yet he still persists with it. I mean, I've always felt with Josh that the idea of him playing centrally is quite exciting because I feel like he can get in behind, and he has shown he's pretty good in one-to-one situations most of the time. The kind of curiosity in that, and I think I mentioned it the other week, is that the 2 goals where he has had kind of been played in behind and finished well have come from him playing a little wider and then come and drifting inside. And there's no doubt that, and in fact it was with Marley Central, Anel Hernandez and Josh wider, that 3 looked quite threatening in the second half at Barnsley. But I don't think you get the spaces to play like that at Carrow Road. I think that's a trickier thing.
Possibly not. Once they were on the pitch, it just gave Marley a bit more freedom, didn't it? All of a sudden he had a bit more space to play with and he didn't look so isolated. But yeah, I mean, I've written a piece in the paper today about, tomorrow's Josh's 100th appearance if he makes it, and as far as I'm concerned, Josh is much better out wide. If you were playing him up front with a big striker, a Ewan Roberts or a traditional centre forward type player that he could play around, then I think that's the same sort of thought process as previous Norwich managers had with Nathan Redmond, that he could you could utilise that pace and that he can score a goal as well. But I prefer to see Josh out on the left, attacking his fullback, and from when he was coming through as a young lad and he was causing all that excitement in the Youth Cup, how many times did he cut in from the left onto his right and bend a shot into the far top corner? It almost like, I'm not saying he's that level obviously, but Arjen Robben throughout his career did the same thing over and over again just because he could do it quicker than anyone else. Andros Townsend does it for Palace at times, doesn't he? Everyone knows that he's going to cut in on his left and spank a shot, and he sometimes does it so quickly that you can't stop him, and that's what you want Josh doing, what has served him so well up to this point.
I've heard a lot of defenders say it's not necessarily not knowing what's going to come, it's how you then stop it, and I think we've seen that with James St Maddison. Every Championship team will know exactly what James Maddison's doing each season, but most of them are unable to stop it because he's at that level.
He's so intelligent as well that when someone's going to get him, he knows it, and he's good at turning his body away, isn't he, and buying the foul. And to be perfectly honest, that was something Grant Holt was good at, wasn't he? Grant knew when he was going to lose a tackle, and he knew how to turn it into a foul.
And there was a nice line from Mario Vrancic today saying just how good James Maddison has been and how much he's impressed him ever since he first started training with him in the summer. Nice little line. He couldn't believe it when James Maddison told him he didn't play a lot last season. He's not the only one, but again, that is raking over old ground.
I suppose he's got in Mario's way to a certain extent because he would have liked to have had more free kicks, no doubt. I mean, we saw him at Brentford in the Cup. He scored the free kick and the penalty, didn't he? And I mean, in his younger days, I think it was at Dortmund under 23s when he was younger, probably before David Wagner as well. He scored like 20 odd goals in one season in the German 4th tier when he was coming through. So Mario knows where the goal is, but it's not really happened for him in those terms in the Championship yet, has it?
No, he's got a good shot on him as well.
Yeah.
So I think it'll happen at some point, but he hasn't got his first league goal yet, so we will see. Richard Caston, I'd like to see Hernandez and Wes together again, and that's a nice point because I thought that pair actually combined really nicely when they were both on the pitch late on. Both clinging to the kind of right side actually, which is something Wes did again when he came on against Forest. So I looked at those two and thought, well, they're combining well.
Yeah, sometimes players just have a bit of an immediate connection, don't they? Like Wes and Pritchard seemed to have it to a certain extent last season, in that sort of spell when they played well with no pressure on them. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Hernandez can do tomorrow because he's been improving game by game, and he definitely made a difference at Barnsley on Tuesday. If he can really rip into Reading, I think that he's going to be fairly quickly becoming a bit of a fan favourite because he's that type of player who gets fans off their seats.
And anything like the way that Norwich ripped into Reading last season would be very good, wouldn't it? 7-1, 6 goals in one half in front of the Barclay.
That was the first time in 109 years that 6 goals have been scored in the first half at Carrow Road. So. Whereas,
my little stat, Norwich have had successive home goalless draws twice this season. Before the first time, which was Burton and Bristol City, Norwich hadn't apparently done that outside the top flight since 1921.
Yeah, that's
and
grim,
it could be 3 successive goalless draws come Saturday. Let's hope not. Don't want to have to write that.
Let's hope not. I don't ever want to relive either of the Burton 0-0 games. They were horrible, weren't they? That was like watching Sunday League games at a park.
Indeed. Just to bring a couple of you latecomers up to speed, John Watson, in terms of the injury and sickness list, basically it's pretty improved in terms of the sickness. All of those details are at PinkUn.com. And Andy Lazzle, Alex Tetty, fingers crossed, should be back after the international break. It doesn't sound like he'll be too far away, so that is good. I think we've touched on most of the things there. Christoph Martin asked the question, let's address this. How close would you say we are to challenging for promotion next year? Which is a really awkward question, I think, because I think Norwich are going to lose some of the quality that they've got this year, whoever that is. I know Paddy's quite convinced that Nelson Oliveira should be binned off, and in terms of James Maddison, it will be some task keeping hold of him, but it depends on who's coming in for him and how much they're offering, of course. And rebuilding that squad without players like Angus Gunn as well. It's a really difficult one. Personally, I think you'd look for improvement, but I think it'll be tough.
Yeah, from where we sit today, they would have to reinvest the money that they bring in from Maddison very well to be pushing. But equally, from the model that they're going with, you're thinking more along the lines of that Paul Lambert team, aren't you, of 2010-11, who were put together as a team and as a unit, and that wasn't a squad that had big money spent on it. It was one that was moulded together to have that sort of promotion assault. And if memory serves me right, when Norwich were promoted from League One, it wasn't like we all started that season thinking that Norwich would go up. It was like, great, back in the Championship, start to rebuild. But Lambert obviously nailed it so much that they were able to go straight through and up to the Prem. But I think it's going to be difficult, but that's the sort of thing you're aiming for now. But actually pulling that off is not easy. But you have to, I suppose, remember that Stuart Webber played a big part in pulling off something like that at Huddersfield last year. They've now had that season to put that all in place, and if they can start pulling it together as they did at Huddersfield next season, then great, and everyone will be well on board with it. But if it's another season of this where there's so many inconsistencies and too many of the players aren't convincing, then there's only so far that patience is going to hold out, isn't it?
It's a really difficult one, and I guess partly what we're articulating is the decrease in expectation. It's that decrease in expectation. It's a departure from where Norwich have been. That's probably the biggest thing they'll have in common with the team that got promoted in
you almost need it, don't you?
Exactly. And that may free them up to be, therefore, shedding of that expectation to a degree. Hopefully will free them up to be successful.
Because that can create a united spirit as well, can't it? Because you're then sort of the rebels and the underdogs or whatever, and you can you try and upset the party for everyone else. But it'll be nice to maybe not have every opposition manager praising Norwich and then turning up here and doing a job on them.
Yeah, but maybe next season they'll say, well, it's not the same side it used to be, so let's go and do them, and then failing. That would be good. John Watson says, I met Matt Jarvis this week and asked him what he thinks about Maddison staying, and he was very cagey on answering it. Probably because he thought you'd put it in a Facebook post later on, John. So that's the players' lot, and that is how it is. But there we go. It will play out how it plays out come the summer. At least we know we've got him until then.
But of course, we saw Grant Hanley's little signature on the match ball last weekend, didn't we? What did he say?
25 million at least, wasn't it?
Yeah, so
I agree.
So
personally,
the players clearly know about it. And one of the final questions I put to Mario Vrancic today was, do the players actively talk about the home form and wanting to score more goals and as a lot of the German players have sort of followed in Daniel's lead in describing it as they want it to be their living room. They want it to be, where they're comfortable at home. So, and he said yes, that they actually are actively talking about it in the dressing room. That they want it to change and they want to entertain the home fans. And that's good to hear, because you sometimes worry that players come out and they say the right things to the media, tick those boxes. But you need people sort of rattling cages in the dressing room saying, come on, this is our stadium, we need to make sure that we're winning. And Reading haven't shown much spirit at all this season. They've been a mess. So if Norwich can play as they've shown they can do and control the game early doors and get a goal, there's no reason they can't get a good result. Maybe
this will be the weekend they blow someone away. You never know.
Feels like we've been thinking that for a while, doesn't it?
Yeah. Go on then, Dave. Give us a prediction. What do you reckon for tomorrow?
I think it's going to be tight, actually. Having said that, I'm going to go with 1-0 Norwich, just because I think Reading are not in a good place, and hopefully Norwich are in a less bad
place. I like that.
So Yeah, because of the I think the Forest game the other week, they're another team who like to dominate possession, and they're really high in the average possession stats as well. So I think we're going to see another tight game in that respect, because I don't think Norwich have got the confidence and the goal scoring ability up front without a fully fit and firing Nelson Oliveira to really blow teams away at the moment. So I'm going to go 1-0, and I'd be perfectly happy with that at the moment as well.
Yep, too true. Let's say a 3-1 Norwich win, they're just going to click. And there's no basis for that because they're missing so many players. But what the hell? Why not? Let's do it. And we will, of course, bring you all the live team news, build-up, live coverage of the game, Norwich City against Reading, reaction and analysis afterwards too. It is just the two of us. Paddy's busy winning a load of money down at Cheltenham, so good on him. So yeah, PinkUn.com for all the action tomorrow. And in the meantime, thank you very much, Dave. Thanks all for getting involved. We do always appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow. Fingers crossed, eh?